Sukkah shehi gavoa lamala me'esrim amma psula. That's how Masechet Sukkah starts, by teaching us that if a sukkah is taller than 20 amot, an amma is a hand's breadth, somewhere between 1.5 and 2 feet. But if a sukkah is taller than 20 amot, then it's puzzle. It's no good. And the question is why? So the opening daf of Masechet Sukkah is spent with all the Amoraim suggesting different reasons. So one answer thrown out for why 20 amot is the maximum height from a sukkah is by Rabbi Zera. And Rabbi Zera says, I want to teach you guys a physics lesson. Essentially, whenever there is a ray of sun shining, if I put something in front of the ray of sun that interferes with the sun ray, then that creates shade. So essentially, if you have a sukkah that's less than 20 amot tall, and you're sitting on the bottom of the sukkah, then when you have sun shining into the sukkah, whether it's shining through the top or through one of the sides, then the shade that you experience when you're sitting in the bottom of the sukkah, the thing that's interfering with the sun rays and therefore creating that shade, is going to be the schach. The schach is going to be interfering with the sun. The schach is going to provide you shade, and the schach is going to be what's protecting you from the heat of the sun. However, says Rabbi Zera, if you have a sukkah that's taller than 20 amot high, then unless the sun is shining directly on top of the schach, unless it's exactly noon, which most of the day it's not going to be, let's say the sun is coming from that direction or from that direction, then when you experience shade, when you're sitting on the bottom of the sukkah, when you feel protection from the intense rays of the sun, it's not going to be the schach that's interfering with the rays of the sun. It's not going to be the schach that's providing you shade, but most likely it's going to be the walls of the sukkah that are protecting you from the sun, that are interfering with the rays. It's going to be the walls of the sukkah that's providing you shade, not the schach. And Rabbi Zera says that's why a sukkah has to be less than 20 amot tall. So if you didn't get all the physics, it's okay. The important part is that according to Rabbi Zera, only when the sukkah is less than 20 amot is the shade going to be coming from the schach instead of going to be coming from the walls. And we nod our heads when we pretend to understand this complicated answer. And so we say, wait a second, why does it matter? Rabbi Zera seems so set in the idea that the shade that we feel in the sukkah has to come from the schach instead of from the walls. But at the end of the day, shade is shade. But I guess in order to answer that question, we have to ask the even bigger question. Why is shade such an important factor when it comes to sukkah? Why do we need to experience shade and feel shade in our sukkah? And there's an important halachic principle that we learn when it comes to the shade of a sukkah. It's called silta meruba mechamata, that there has to be more shade than sun. Meaning, when I'm building my sukkah and I go out and build this hut outside, so I might think that, if I'm already building a hut outside, it's going to be a nice autumn day, so I might as well open up the roof, have a lot of space there to really feel the breeze and feel the sunlight and enjoy my time outside. So no, you can't have a lot of chama, you can't have a lot of sunlight inside of your sukkah. So you may think, okay, you can't have a lot of sunlight, so the important thing to have in your sukkah must be shade then, and therefore I want to have the shadiest sukkah, and you build a great roof that blocks out all sun. But no, that's not good either. The requirement for the sukkah is silta meruba machamata. You need more shade than sun, which means you need to have a majority shade, and you can't have a majority of sun, but you still need to have some sun. If you don't have any sun, the sukkah is not good. Which brings us back to our question. Why? Why is shade so important for a sukkah? So when Rabbi Zera is teaching us this about the maximum height of a sukkah being 20 amot, and he says because only when it's less than 20 amot is the shade coming from the schach instead of from the walls, he quotes a pasuk. The pasuk he quotes is from Sefer Yeshayahu. In the 4th parak, where Yeshayahu was describing the end of days, when we're going to have Tzion, when we're going to have the Geula, when Mashiach is going to come. And it describes a kind of protection that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to set up for the people. And it says as follows: V'sukat yalitzel yomam mechorev, that Hashem is going to set up a sukkah to be shade, to protect during the day from all the heat. And it's going to be some sort of shelter to protect from intense rain. But the point is that the sukkah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to build at the end of the days, whether it be a physical sukkah or a metaphorical sukkah, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to protect us from the intensity of the world around us. Now notice how Rabbi Zera didn't quote the classic pasuk that's thrown around when it comes to Sukkot. The pasuk from Parshat Emor, Ki vasukot hoshavti b'nei Yisrael b'hotzi'o otam me'eretz Mitzrayim, that we sit in a sukkah so that we remember that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sat us in Sukkot when we left Egypt, when we were traveling in the desert. That's not what he says. Rabbi Zera says that Sukkot is not supposed to commemorate something that happened in the past, but it's supposed to cause us to think about something that's going to happen in the future. The protection we're going to experience from HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the future, in the end of days when Mashiach comes. We have a similar idea in the pasuk from Sefer Amos. Now, no one knows this pasuk from Sefer Amos. We know it from the Harachman we say in benching on Sukkot and from the song. But the pasuk in Sefer Amos also describing what's going to happen when HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes us out of Galut, takes us out of exile, and brings us back to the land of Israel, seemingly during the times of Mashiach at the end of the days. Amos says, Bayam Ahu, Akim et Sukkot David Hanofelet. At the end of the days, on that day, when I bring you back from exile, Hashem says, I am going to establish the fallen Sukkah of the kingdom of David. Hashem is going to reset up the Beit HaMikdash, and there's going to be this Sukkah that exists again, some sort of protection. And the question is, why? What's going on here? We see that the Sukkah represents some sort of protection, and somehow that's going to provide us with some sort of shade. So we have to understand that at the end of the days, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu provides us with this Sukkah, provides us with this protection, there's something unique going on here. Because it's not just that we're going to be protected, but because during the end of days and the times of Mashiach, we're going to be so aware of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, his presence is going to be so known in the world, and it's not just that we're going to be experiencing protection, but we're going to be aware of God's protection. Or to say it differently, the point of the Sukkah isn't to represent God's protection, but a Sukkah is supposed to represent our awareness of God's protection. Why does that matter to us? Because we said the halacha is that a Sukkah has to be tzilta merupa mechamata, that the schach has to provide majority shade, more shade than sunlight, but there still needs to be some sunlight. Why is that? If the whole goal is to have shade, then shouldn't more shade be better than less shade? Why do we want a little bit of sunlight seeping through the cracks? But maybe this is exactly the point. Because yes, if I had my entire schach open and it was just a sunroof and I felt sunlight, then I would be exposed, I would be vulnerable, I wouldn't be protected from the external world, from all the harshness that exists outside. So we need sail, we need shade, because that represents God protecting us. But if I'm in my house, like I am right now, and I have a nice, perfect roof above me that lets in no external elements, then yes, I'm being protected, but I'm not feeling the fact that I'm being protected, because I'm not even aware of the fact that there's something out there from which I need to be protected. But when I'm in the Sukkah, and I have majority shade, and I feel that protection, but I see little holes in the roof, and I see that there's sunlight seeping through the cracks, then it hits me that yes, I'm being protected, but there's something out there from which I need to be protected. And that's exactly the feeling that we need to feel in the Sukkah. That again, Sukkah doesn't just represent our protection, that Hashem is protecting us from the outside, but it represents that we are aware of the fact that Hashem is protecting us from the outside. And that's exactly what Rabbi Zera was talking about. Yes, you need shade in the Sukkah. You need to feel God's protection. You need to feel what we're going to feel in the days of Mashiach, that Hashem is protecting us. But it's not enough to get that shade from the walls, because the walls are solid structures. And if we only got that shade from the walls, then it'd be just like as if we're inside. We would feel protected, but we wouldn't recognize that there's something from which we need to be protected. We would be getting protection, but we'd be passive about it. We would overlook the fact that we're being protected. We would take it for granted. Only when the shade that we're getting in the Sukkah is from the schach, not the walls, from the schach, where we get a lot of shade, but we also get those cracks of sunlight. Are we suddenly aware that the protection that we're getting is because HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs to protect us from the external world, from a lot of the harshness of the world around us? We recognize that the stuff from which we need to be protected, and we currently are being protected from that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one protecting us from that. And that message of the Sukkah isn't necessarily something that we got back in the Midbar, but something that we're going to be getting in the future, in the times of Mashiach. That's exactly our goal for this year. We're going to be spending the next 7 days sitting in the Sukkah. And when we do so, we should look up at the schach and try to internalize the message that we're getting so much shade, so much protection from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but there are cracks. There are things, there are harshnesses from the world that are let in. And the reason why we need protection from HaKadosh Baruch Hu is because there are things out there from which we need to be protected, from things that are scary. And we should try to take this lesson of Sukkot and take it with us throughout the rest of the year. That even though the rest of the year where we're sitting inside of our homes, and it's easy to forget the fact that we need protection, and therefore it's easy to forget the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is protecting us, try to remind ourselves of this idea. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always there, whether we feel him or not. He's always protecting us. Or to quote Ruth Bader Ginsburg, just because you're not getting wet while you're under the umbrella doesn't mean you could just get rid of the umbrella. Okay, everyone have a great Shabbos and a Chag Sameach, and we'll talk to you soon.